Y'all, I'm here today giving spooky looks and books and basically rummaging through basically a lot of trash ass books to tell you which ones are actually good and should be on your bookshelf. Hey everyone, it's Krishana. Welcome back to my channel. And today I am going to be giving you some amazing books by Black authors that are spooky, horrific, and a little bit thriller to add to your bookshelf. So whether you're looking at this in October, near Halloween, or any time of year, these are books that you 100% need for your bookshelf. If you are new here, I'm Krishana. I'm a very avid reader. I am a recovering journalist and speculative fiction writer myself. I read fantasy, sci-fi, a little bit of contemporary, and basically, I think that I have the critical eye on the books that you need on your bookshelf. I primarily read Black authors, and I'm gonna kind of basically give you some of my favorite books that you need to add to your bookshelf today. What'll be most important for you to know about these recommendations are that these are books that you probably are not seeing recommended anywhere else. And so I'm hoping that I'm able to give you some books that you maybe have never heard of, the authors that you don't know that you need to add to your bookshelf, add to your collection, and read them immediately. These books are in no particular order, so let's just jump right into it. This first book is called My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyakon Braithwaite. And so this book is really, really good, especially for folks who are into Nollywood movies. And so Nollywood is basically Nigerian. Hollywood is called Nollywood, very similar to like Bollywood, basically. And so the thing about Nigerian Hollywood movies is that they basically are like over the top, extra, and all the things. Like if you could take every ridiculous trope, all of the stupid and ridiculous situations, and just like throw it all into one movie, that is what these are. So you know that everything is going to be over the top and a lot, and I'm actually always here for the drama. So this book follows a main character who works at a hospital, and she basically cleans up the messes of her sister. And by cleans up the messes, I mean that basically her sister has had this string of lovers, and whenever she is like not feeling this lover anymore or they get into it, she just murders them off with their head. Murders this person, dick, gone. She has basically cleaned up now, I think, 2 deaths of people and crime scenes of people that her sister has murdered. And she's basically taking like the cleaning agent from the hospital and like bleaching down crime scenes, okay? And so everything is all fine and dandy. Like she's mad at her sister, but like it's just letting her sister kind of do her over here until her sister decides that she's now in love with this guy at the hospital that our main character is also in love with. And of course, she's like, stop the damn presses. You can't be in love with him because, girl, as soon as you're upset with these men, you killed them, and you can't kill him because he is my bae. And so again, drama, ridiculousness, over the top thriller story. And so I would say that like you should 100% check this one out. And if you end up liking this, I promise you need to get a subscription or update your subscription to Netflix and basically check out the Nollywood section on Netflix, because if you like this, there are tons and tons and tons of movies that you are missing out on, okay? My husband got me into Nollywood. That was his like little thing that he liked to watch before we met. And when I tell you, honey, I am also obsessed because really, I love watching films starring and made by Black people, but inherently, like at some point, you've seen everything, and not everything, but like you've seen everything. And so inherently, I had to go international. Let's go to the continent. Let's see what they're watching over there too. And I would say that Nollywood is definitely something that like we should all watch and support. Okay, so this next book that I'm going to recommend is called Hollywood Homicide by Kelly Garrett. And what I love about this book is that it's a duology. Now, I did talk to the author on Twitter and asked her, like, it seems like there's going to be another book. Like, where's the third book, sis? Like, where is it? And unfortunately, she told me that the publisher actually shuttered the imprint that this book was purchased by. And so that means that they own the rights to the book because she can't sell it anywhere else. And that means that we will never get our third book, which sucks. But there are 2 books for you to enjoy in this series. And so this series is basically Clueless meets Sherlock Holmes, kind of meets Murder, She Wrote. I would say more so Sherlock Holmes. So our main character is this like semi-famous actress. She basically does commercials and was like basically like Flo, like on one of those commercials, like somebody that everybody would know on a commercial. And so sis is now living in LA and she is flat broke. She happens to be riding down the street with her homies and sees this hit and run, which ends up being a murder. And so later she finds out that there's a $15,000 reward for any information and the solving of this case. And so she calls, gives her information that she saw to the police, tells them what she saw, and basically the police don't do much with this. So because sis wants her money, she wants the 15K, she takes it upon herself to solve this murder on her own. And it just leads to like tons of foolishness. So like sis ends up going to celebrities' homes. She ends up like bombing a movie premiere. There's just like tons of like crazy situations and scenarios that she gets herself into until finally there's a murder plot now out to kill her as well. And so I would say like this book is like a little lighthearted, a little silly, but also very fun. All of the characters are very like well written. There's like a lot of depth to the characters. She has a like good gang of friends. It also includes like a little bit of like a romance angle as well. And so I would say that 100% please get both Hollywood Homicide and the sequel to this as well. You will not regret it. It's definitely like a little fun, lighthearted series, and it's just like really well done. And I will say, I don't believe in this book I was able to guess who done it. There's no like long villain monologue, because who wants that? So this is definitely one that you need. Okay, so the next two books that I have are both by the same author, one of my favorites, which is P. Djeli Clark. So P. Djeli Clark is a historian, anthropologist by trade, and you can definitely see it in his books. So the first book we're going to talk about is Ring Shout. Now, Ring Shout is basically like a retelling of, you know, this big meeting that happened on Stone Mountain when The Birth of a Nation first came out, but like retold from like a fantasy, speculative fiction lens. So basically there's this woman who is a fighter and like hunts monsters, and she hunts these monsters called Ku Kluxes. So basically, like, we know we're in like the 1920s in Georgia, and there's the KKK running amok, doing just ridiculous stuff, like being evil. Basically, they're being evil. And so there are these other like monsters hiding amongst the KKK called Ku Kluxes, which are like these undead evil beings that only like this main character and some of her friends can see, and they hunt them. And so this story kind of just like has them going on the hunt to basically like stop these like demon things from like killing people in Macon, Georgia. And so I would say that like this is definitely a book that you need to get and check out, and needs to be added to your bookshelf, especially if you're into history and like little weird, interesting retellings. The next book by P. Djeli Clark is called Master of Jinn. And so this book is great because if you end up liking this book, there's other books kind of like in this series with other characters. But basically this book follows the character Fatima, who is basically like an androgynous seeker who is a detective, who's a part of this like mystical like detective society. So like, okay, wait. She works for the Ministry of Alchemy, Enchantments, and Supernatural Entities. And so basically, a member of the secret brotherhood is murdered, and this like supernatural demon thing called Al Jahir comes and like takes responsibility for the murder and basically says like, I'm back, let's go. And so Al Jahir is actually responsible for initially bringing like magic into this world. And so this is actually set in Cairo in the 1912s. And so again, if you're into like historical fiction, supernatural elements, fantasy, this is definitely the book for you. Our next book is by an author that I honestly just like love so much, and it's by Akwaeke Emezi, and it is called Bitter. So Bitter is actually the companion novel of another book called Pet, and I kind of feel like you should read this companion prequel first. Like, Pet is good, don't get me wrong, it's a good book, but there's like this element of information gap in Pet that makes the book a book, right? And so Bitter answers all of those questions. So I would say like, if you only have time to read one of them, read Bitter. If you have time to read both of them, read Pet first. But we're going to talk about Bitter. So, Bitter focuses on this young student, Bitter, who grew up in foster care and was able to go to this elite creative school in the town that she lives in Lucille, called Eucalyptus. And so Eucalyptus is like has this wall around the school, and it keeps the students like safe while they create. In the actual town of Lucille, there's just like a lot of like chaos happening. So, there's this like armed resistance, this resistance against like police brutality and other forms of brutality that is being inflicted on the people of Lucille by these like, bad people, people who are like harming and hurting the people of Lucille. And so the resistance of this movement, this resistance movement, is mostly of young people, so like teenagers, the same age as Bitter. But a lot of these kids who are in the resistance don't go to Eucalyptus. And so Bitter had a really, really hard childhood. And the way Bitter copes with that hard childhood is by creating these little, like doodling these little like monsters, like mini monsters. And so one day Bitter realizes that I think she like nicks herself or hurts herself or something and bleeds a little bit, and the blood gets on the drawing or creation that she made, and it comes to life. And so these little monsters stay around for about 24 hours, and they're harmless. Like they basically help her. Some almost like butterflies and other things, just whatever her mind can create. Come to find out, one day she draws this monster being thing, and it comes to life, and it says that it is seeking revenge to stop all of these bad people who are taking over Lucille. And obviously, like, Bitter has no way to control this thing, and the revenge continues and happens. And so there's like this fantasy element and speculative fiction element to this book, but then there's this whole other element of like social justice movement, abolition, anti-prisons, like underpin of this, and it's just done really, really well. And so I would say that, like, if you're looking for your speculative fiction and your fantasy and the things that you read to be a window and to draw inferences about what the world could be without all of these oppressive systems, then this is definitely the type of book for you. I would recommend this author to anyone. I have others of their works, and like you have to read them. Like they're just really, really good. I will 100% say add this one to your list. And I would say like this is a book that you could also read with your teen kid or your preteen kid as well. And it's not so like childish that adults couldn't read it. And so like this is really one of those books that's like a good conversation starter for the entire family. Okay, so the next book that I'm recommending is called The Ballad of Black Tom, and this is by Victor LaValle. And so I would say, like, if you are interested or like Lovecraft Country, this is a book that is probably for you. So I actually added it to my TBR list right after I finished Lovecraft Country when I was thinking about reading the book that inspired the show. I ended up not reading that, but I did come across this book. And this book was, it's kind of like a retelling or recasting of a book by H.P. Lovecraft, which is called The Horror at Red Hook. And it's retold by basically like a black man is the main character. So in A Ballad of Black Tom, we're now in like 1920s New York, right? And so the main character, whose name is Charles Thomas Lester, is basically like, I won't call him a con artist, but kind of a con artist. Like he kind of takes these odd jobs for some of the rich white people who live like in the area. But whenever he like does a job, he ensures that like he can do another job. So basically like he doesn't fully fulfill whatever the job is. He withholds something to ensure that like he can keep working basically. And so while he's out on a job, he's like playing his guitar or something, and this white dude hears him play and basically like commissions him to play at this party that he's going to be having. Come to find out, this guy is like this rich white guy who like is some kind of like, I don't know, magical wizard being person, and just is really not up to any good. And so this is one of those stories where if I tell you too much more about it, I would be giving it away because it's a very short story. It's a short novella. But honestly, like it packs a punch. And so Victor LaValle is like one of those writers that like you 100% have to read. The story is non-traditional. Like it doesn't go the way you think it would go, and it doesn't have like a more traditional story arc either. And so I just think this is one that has to be included on your bookshelf. Our next book is called Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. And honestly, I loved this book. So this book is like Snowpiercer meets like the antebellum South. And so basically, like, unlike Snowpiercer, where there's like this train that everybody's on, this one is a spaceship. And so basically, like, every group, or like based on like their socioeconomic status, is on a different level in the spaceship. And unfortunately, of course, the people in the lower level end up being people of African descent from the continent, and they are like basically slaves. And parts of this ship are basically turned into the antebellum South, and they're like still picking cash crops, and it's actually just ridiculous. And so our main character, the reason that they're such a great and compelling character is they're queer, they're non-gender conforming, they're non-neurotypical, just really like depicting what an amazing character would be. And so basically the way this story works is our main character was found some journals of their mom, and their mom basically gave them this coded message that leads them to be able to have a slave revolt on this spaceship. And I think that's where I'm going to end it as far as like giving information and details about the story, because it's just like so well done. The great thing about this story too, very similar to Bitter, is that there's like all of these layers. There's like talks about white supremacy and capitalism and racism and like just all these isms. And then it also includes like gender nonconforming folks, and like talks about someone who's like non-neurotypical. Like there's all these layers, and it's just done so well. Like River Solomon did their thing, like really truly did their thing in this book. And if you just want to read it for the strict fantasy element of it, do you, boo. But like, I think to be able to basically get like a Snowpiercer style story in a book done by a Black person, chef's kiss. So this is one you definitely have to add. And I will be reading other River Solomon books like very soon myself. Our next book is All Her Little Secrets by Wanda M. Morris. And so this book is really, really good because it's a thriller. I would say this book is like How to Get Away with Murder equals The Partner from Netflix. And so I don't think you need to watch The Partner, but that's what it's giving. And so basically there's this Black woman who's a lawyer, and she's having a affair with her white boss at her job. They usually get to work early and do their little thing and like, you know, cuddle up or whatever. And she gets to work early one day to see him, and this man ends up dead, like gone, deceased, dead, murdered, okay? And she sees him dead and murdered, and instead of like calling 911 or like, you know, letting somebody else who's in the office know, sis just closes the door and backs away. So like she just starts making a series of really, really bad decisions. Within like 24 hours of her boo getting murdered, she's given his job. So there's this other fishy element, because people are like, were you already vying for this man's position? And then very soon after, of course, people start questioning her about the murder, because of course somebody's going to put the pieces together that clearly can tell that, like, you know, you was having something was going on with you and him. Like y'all both got to work early every day. And then like basically her whole family gets wrapped up into the drama as well. And it just really becomes this like really quick, fast-paced thriller. This book is really good because like you don't really get a chance to suspect the whodunit element. There's also these layers of like racism and sexism and white supremacy in there as well. There's like pieces of capitalism, infidelity. Like there's just a lot going on with this book. And this is one of the only books that is more of a contemporary read. So there's no like fantasy or sci-fi elements in this book. But it is a thriller, and it does move quickly at a really good pace, and it's well written. And so I would say that like if sci-fi and fantasy is not really your thing, but you do like thrillers, this is probably your book. If you're interested in like a lawyer headline, this is your book. Black woman lawyer, and basically like a case of like the wrong person is being framed for a murder, also your book. So definitely please check this one out. Our next book, you can tell I love this book, and it is well loved by me because it is getting a little tattered, but it is Octavia's Brood. And so this compilation anthology was put together by one person that you may know, who is Adrienne Maree Brown, and Walida Amarisha. Walida, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, sis. Blame it on my brain, not on my heart, okay? But this anthology, they brought together 20 authors. All of them are not Black, but I think all of them are BIPOC. And so they basically asked them to write some speculative fiction, but all of them aren't authors. Like some of them are social justice and social movement workers. And so basically, the prompt was to envision a world where there was no racism, sexism, no prisons, no capitalism, and basically like what would this world look like? And so there are a few essays in here, but there are also just some really good speculative fiction stories as well. And so like we had everybody in here from incarcerated activist Mamiya Abdul-Jamal to Octavia Butler activist Tana Reeve Dew. So like your heavy hitters are in this book. And it's just so worth the money, like just definitely worth the money. And so it's basically called Science Fiction Stories from Social Justice Movements. And it includes like sci-fi, fantasy, horror, magical realism, and just really is an opportunity to like tell these really interesting stories, but make it social justice. And my very last book, I kind of saved my favorite for last. And I know I said that I wouldn't say what my favorite is, but this one kind of is my favorite. And it's called Friday Black. And this book is by Nana Kwame Adjei Brenya. And I mean, honestly, this is just a truly masterful book. I probably read this book first before I read any of the other books in this list that I recommended. And so Friday Black was the debut collection of short stories. This book is set in the near dystopian future and literally does this like critical analysis, keen eye of like all of the isms, consumerism, capitalism, racism, etc., all in one swoop, and it just knocks a punch. The author has been compared to like Colson Whitehead as well as like Marlon James, like definitely chef's kiss of an author. The short stories, they do everything from like talk about, you know, what if racism was a sport to like the horrors of consumerism. So literally everything in between. And I'm going to read this part, but the author also has an upcoming novel being released in April 2023 called Chain Gang All-Stars. And so basically, like the main character is living in this private prison. They are incarcerated and they have the opportunity to do this gladiator style like game event to be able to get their freedom. And instead decides to shake shit up right before they're about to get their freedom. And so I think that like this author definitely has like a critique of the larger world, all of the systemic racism and issues that are plaguing America, and we're going to see it in the stories. So here are my books, the selections that I have provided for y'all to take a look during this like spooky horror thriller month, as well as all year long. Honestly, like these are just some really, really good stories to check out. I have really enjoyed all of these books. I recommend them to people all the time. So again, I'm Krishana. Thank you so much for joining me on this booktube channel. Don't forget to hit the like button as well as click subscribe so you never miss another video. Okay, like I want to make sure that we continue to be in community together. So if you've seen any of these books and you really like them, add a black heart down below if you really like this list, and please like add any additionals that you really liked down below in the comments, and let other people know what other Black authors you're reading that you really enjoyed. I will catch y'all next time. Peace.